Good afternoon, friends. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive, and this is our 2 o'clock Westchester coronavirus update for the second day of June, Tuesday, June 2nd. I'm here today with the mayor of the city of White Plains, Tom Roach, and has been our practice recently now. We invite various mayors and supervisors to join us to give everyone in the county an update about what's happening in their community. We've had the pleasure of speaking with Mayor Noam Bramson late last week from New Rochelle, Village Mayor Paul Rosenberg from Rye Brook, and over the various recent weeks, we've had Matt Slater from Yorktown, Sean Patterson-Howard from Mount Vernon, Mike Spano from Yonkers. Since we are here at the county office building in the city of White Plains, we certainly should make sure we have our friend who's the mayor of the city of White Plains. White Plains is the center of Westchester County. It has long been the commercial, economic, shopping center of the community, and it is our home community. So we're very happy to have a very dynamic mayor to lead it, a friend, and someone who'll give us a little update on what's happening in the city of White Plains. The Honorable Tom Roach, mayor of the city.
Thank you, George. It's my pleasure to be here today. Well, one thing we did this morning was receive a donation of masks from the county, supported by the car dealers and Hanes. We have been using the masks we received from the beginning. Last night we formally accepted some mask donations that had come early on, including one from one of our council members, to distribute right from the beginning out to senior buildings, low-income housing, places that the data was showing us were potentially a problem for communication of the disease. And so that's what's going to happen with these. What's nice is many of the masks that we were given today at City Hall are the Hanes masks, which are washable and reusable, which is nice. In terms of the city, we're slowly trying to come back to life, get people to work. You can see as we entered phase one, some of the retailers open up for curbside pickup, and that's been a positive. And we've also had more of the stores start to open. I think the big test for us is going to be phase two, when we go to full retail opening. We've been engaged with the malls about how that can work, and right now the malls cannot open, but they can do curbside, which both of them, the Galleria and the Westchester, are doing. In terms of city center, that has been functioning throughout because Target and ShopRite are both have grocery stores and pharmacies. So we made the case early on. They're also capable of having their own entrance. So like if you're in ShopRite, in order to get to Target, you have to go back to the parking lot and go down and re-enter, because one of the exceptions in the malls is if you have an exterior entry. So we've worked really hard on that and make sure there's no places people can congregate. But our restaurants, this is a city that's become a hub for entertainment and dining. Our restaurants are a big employer and a big contributor to our community, and they're really struggling. So we're hopeful of getting them on their feet as quickly as possible. I've formed a committee, an advisory committee on the reopening. We're going to have our first meeting this week, and has a number of people engaged in it in the restaurant business, and we want to work with restaurants. I've already been talking to them. Part of the thing that comes up with these reopenings, and one of the benefits that Westchester didn't go first, I mean, we were all frustrated at the time, but in a way, now we can see, okay, Capital District goes, I believe Western New York and Capital District, one or the other went today or tomorrow, but we're going to have people in phase two before us. So that means that the EDC will draw up the guidelines. Many of the restrictions that have been placed, sometimes we didn't know what the guidelines associated with them would be. So having that in hand, knowing what the guidelines are, enables us to work with the restaurants more closely. Are they going to allow, like, what percentage, when they open the restaurants, what percentage will they allow to be in the restaurant? Will it be 25%, 50%, 75%? What will be the restrictions on outdoor dining? That's one of the things we're very focused on right now. How do we expand outdoor dining? Because being outside is safer, as we all know. But it also means that if they can only have a certain percentage of their in-restaurant capacity filled at any given time, having some outside capacity can really help them become more financially successwe're I mean, the numbers, in talking to restaurants, a lot of them say, if you tell me I can open with 25% of my seats, it doesn't make sense. We can't make money. So we're just going to have to wait and see on that. We've had a number of rallies here in White Plains, deserve and absolutely correctly, people angry with what's happening in the country, what hasn't changed in the country, and what we've seen here in White Plains. We just had one last night. George was there. What we've seen in White Plains is people coming out civilly to express their anger and their outrage over the murder of George Floyd and the failure of our nation to come to terms with the impacts of racism that continue and have been part of our country since its founding. And so we want to see that. White Plains has been the hub for vigils, demonstrations, gatherings of all kinds, unions, community groups, because we are the central location in the county. We get approximately 18 large demonstrations every year. And so our police are familiar with it. We have a very soft approach. They don't wear riot gear. They often don't even, people don't even know they're there, because from our perspective, these are people coming out to express themselves. They're not a threat. And that's how we treat it. And the result has so far been very positive. We just passed our budget, tough year to pass a budget, but in some ways a bonus for us, because the cities that are on a calendar year budget pass budgets in January with reasonable revenue expectations that could not be met, obviously, because we have just dropped off a cliff that no one could have foreseen. We had the opportunity to set our budget based on the realities we're dealing with now. We estimated what the damage would be from this downturn, and we're hopeful that we're accurate. Of course, no one knows what's going to happen, but we also did not want to put the city in park for a year. We need to continue the forward progress we've made. We did add additional police officers, partially with the discovery requirements, but also partially because we want to make sure we continue the training that we do. Every year officers receive at least 40 hours of training in addition to their original training. We want everybody to be refreshed on things like de-escalation, on things like implicit bias, and if your police force is too small, you don't have the luxury of doing that. And many departments do not have the luxury of retraining during the course of the year that we do. And we added to the fire department. But in White Plains, every position that opens, we do a review of the positions, and we decide if we're going to fill them. So we're going to have a busy year in that sense, as we monitor the funds that are coming in and decide what we can afford to do.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much, Tom. We appreciate that update on the city of White Plains. You've just heard Tom Roach, who is the mayor for the city and a good partner, as we try to be partnered with all of our different municipal governments, cities, towns, and villages, of which there are 45 across Westchester County. But Tom certainly has the one that most people recognize as being from Westchester, outside of Westchester. So again, Tom, thank you very much for providing the update. Good partnership. As he pointed out, we did cooperate today in giving out some masks that were obtained through some organizations. Mount Hope AME Zion Church, Calvary Baptist Church, Bethel Baptist Church are some of the recipients, and hopefully that will help in the community.
Absolutely.
So, Tom, thank you again. Appreciate having you with us. Tom Roach, Mayor of White Plains. For our formal update today, the numbers from the tracker today show that we have 33,633 individuals that have tested positive for COVID over the course of the 3+ months now that we've been undergoing this pandemic. We have 1,231 active cases, which is a small fraction of the total number of people that have tested positive, and it's much reduced from what it was in our peak 7.5 weeks ago. We have tested 165,091 individuals, and that represents 16.5% of Westchester's population having been tested. And over the course of the next week or so, we should break the 20% mark with 200,000 tests, which is a tremendous amount. 1 out of every 5 Westchester residents shortly will be able to say that they were tested in this county for COVID. And the public health professionals advise us that testing, isolation, and going through the incubation period are the most important tools we have in being able to deal with the contagion. So it is certainly not behind us, but we are certainly at a period of time where the peak has been reduced dramatically, and we're hopeful that those lines will continue. Today marks the fact that we are halfway through phase 1, which, as the governor has laid it out, is a 2-week period of time. Construction projects are open, manufacturing facilities are open, We have some curbside retail going on, not in every context, but in a number of different places. There's some other lesser areas of the economy that are opened up. A week from today, if all matters go well, we'll be opening phase 2. And that will open all the retail facilities in the county, with the exception of those that are interior stores within a shopping mall, so that you're not being able to go into the shopping mall properly. You will be able to go into the major stores, department stores primarily, that have external exits out to the public. So you'll be able to go in from the outside into, here in White Plains, the Bloomingdale's, the Nordstrom's and Neiman Marcus's, but not to the interior stores within inside the mall. So it's not a full retail opening as we perhaps thought originally, but it'll be a significant opening of our retail, all the strip malls that we have, the mom and pop stores, the various downtown shopping centers in our villages and towns. All of that will open a week from today, all factors being equal. If we go through the second phase effectively, and the numbers continue to shrink as they have been through today, then we expect that 2 weeks from today, we would enter phase 3, which is when we would begin the opening of restaurants. And I think that's the one that many of us are looking forward to. By the way, in phase 2, a week from today, is when we would open barbershops and beauty salons. So those who've been waiting to, have their hair cut or whatever, will have that opportunity to do that a week from today, all factors being equal. But the state is in charge of these things. We get many phone calls from people saying, why doesn't the county open this up? Why doesn't the county do this? County government, city government does not have control over these decisions. The decisions are not controlled by your state legislators. Your assembly members and your senators do not have the ability to vote to open something up. The governor has used his executive authority, which is superior to all other governments within the state, and he has taken to himself the responsibility as well as the authority to act to open up segments of the economy when it is believed to be most safe to do that. And the fact that we wear masks and that we practice social distancing is part of that process. So we're hopeful that we'll be in phase 2. Excuse me, a week from today, phase 3, 3 weeks from today, and a week from today, phase 2, 3 weeks from today, phase 3. And with that, we'll see the improvement of the economy and the getting back to work of people across the board. By the way, I've noticed some Facebook comments off of this where individuals have said, how come you don't wear a mask? When I'm speaking publicly in a setting like this, there's nobody within 20 feet of me right now. When the mayor was here, he was masked and he stood more than 6 feet away from me. When he was speaking, I stood more than 6 feet away from him. I took the mask off so I can be heard plainly and clearly in public speaking. I will put the mask back on when we're finished. Nobody's perfect. Nobody has it on all the time, and you should. But for those people who've made the question, if it's a sincere ask of a question, there's your sincere answer. The issue of masks has become a bit of a political football in our society. It's not my purpose to get into the middle of that. The purpose of masks, not to make a political statement or social statement, is because the public health professionals tell us that when I wear a mask, that reduces my ability to project anything that might infect you, and so that's the purpose of my wearing it. However, we have been doing these press conferences remotely so that members of the media are not physically here in this room necessarily, and so that they can be safe, they can pick up the feed of the visual and the audio portions of it, use it for their purposes, but at the same time ask questions through Catherine Chaffee, which we'll get to in a couple of seconds. But for the questions of mask, I'll put my mask on when we complete our updated report. So there we have the statistical information. We continue to see a downward trend across the board, a low number of active cases. We have lost 1,378 Westchester residents to date. We lost 4 of them last night. That overnight death total, always tragic, even if it was one death. But 4 a night, 3 a night the night before that are much, much lower than we were in our peak periods when we lost multiple numbers. We want to mention yesterday we made a public announcement of our pre-opening task force, which will be convening this week. They'll be establishing a number of working groups. And in addition to the people that we announced yesterday who were on the task force itself, we're going to have a number of people joining us for working group capacities. Each working group will be involved in some segment of the economy so that they can work with the state guidelines and the actual individuals who run businesses in that sphere to help them open, to be able to go through and interpret, and where there is some vagueness to try to tighten up what the specifics will be so that whether it's a restaurant, a hotel, a traditional clothing apparel store, whether it's a specialty store, whatever that might be, that they're in a position to be able to open up using the best possible practices and doing the best they can to get back online. And this pre-opening task force, we think is going to be a reopening task force is very critical for us in being able to immediately get the Westchester economy jump-started and moving. We look to New York City's reopening as a factor as well. 200,000 of our residents commute into the city under normal circumstances. The reopening of Manhattan and the Bronx and the other boroughs as well, but primarily the Bronx and Manhattan, which are the two boroughs where Westchester residents tend to work more frequently. The faster those areas open up, the better it'll be for our economy as well. We know that part of the issues that we're handling today now are more than just the spread of the virus. We also have an economic issue and what that means to our budgets. And now, because of the death of George Floyd, we now have an issue of social unrest, and that issue is very much on our minds. I do want to report, now we use this forum each day to give you a report on that there were two incidents in Westchester County last night. They were both in the city of Yonkers, and they both occurred well after hours. A group of men smashed their way into two stores on McLean Avenue overnight. One was a jewelry store, one was a pharmacy, chemist shop, on McLean Avenue. Both of those happened in the vicinity of 4 a.m. They were not tied to any rally. They were not tied to any large group of people. They were, as the security video has shown us, those were burglary, if I have the right word, robbery, whatever the correct legal term is for it. This vandalism was done purposefully to break into these stores, and the third one that I'll mention in a second, to steal material goods that were available in that store to steal. And then also, a group of men smashed their way into a store located in the Cross County Shopping Center, the Zales Jewelry Store. So two jewelry stores and a pharmacy, which would have drugs of certain sorts there. And they were not done as part of a rally or a large group of people. So when you hear that overnight there was looting in those three specific stores, all in the city of Yonkers, what we're dealing with is crime. We're not dealing with an outgrowth of the social unrest movement. It would be wrong to attach these acts of criminality to those who peacefully protest. As the mayor said, there was a peaceful protest last night in White Plains. I attended one the night before that in New Rochelle. There are a couple scheduled tonight in a number of different Westchester communities, and it appears that Westchester residents, while being aggrieved over the death of George Floyd, have done so in a peaceable way. What we see on national television, represents something that has not been happening in Westchester County at this point. We do know that the social chatter feed is alive with rumors and speculations, and we do believe that there are agent provocateurs that are out there that are making efforts to try to come into Westchester and every other place to incite something, and their goals are many and varied. I've had some people assume that it is one end of the political spectrum that is doing this. There is no question that some of the things we're watching on television are encouraged by far left groups, and some of them are by far right groups. And it only tells me the ideology of a person when they assume that only one side is doing this and not the other side. We see both extremes looking to do damage to the American democratic system and the democracy that we live on and we believe in. So at this point, that has not come to visit Westchester in a significant way, but those two break-ins last night that stole goods and services illegally, we treat those as the crimes that they are. We treat the individuals as expected criminals. We hope to pursue them. In fact, there was a car chase in one of them, and the car that had some of these individuals went into the Bronx and escaped in that general direction. So we think what we're looking at is crimes of opportunity where individuals want to try to morph their criminal behavior into what is an otherwise, so far in Westchester, a peaceful effort to protest. I want to point out that we believe that the role of the police in general in our society is an important role, and it's a worthwhile role. And while the incident with George Floyd pointed out the criminality of some individuals who wear the badge, the vast majority of men and women who wear a badge are decent people. They're hardworking. They put their lives on the line. We respect them. What we saw last night in White Plains was quite a lot of police involvement directly inside the programming, and we've seen that in other parts of the country. So anyone who wants to frame this as an anti-police situation across the board would be wrong. There are individuals who have acted with racist intent, and our responsibility is to make sure that we have structures that stop that from happening so that we don't see this happening across the board, not in our backyard and elsewhere. And it's happened in our backyard, not just on television from some distant location. But as we seek to solve what's wrong, and there are things that are wrong, We don't want to paint with a paintbrush that paints everybody that's wrong. This is the work of the anarchists. This is what they want. They want us to start to have a societal breakdown between the left and the right and and all these different entities. And we're not going to permit that. We do not believe in it. We're not going to permit it. There's frustration out there, and the frustration has a natural, proper way to express itself in a democracy. It is why you have free speech and why you have the right of free assembly. Those are constitutional safeguards that were put into place over almost 250 years ago by the very wise people that created this country. They weren't perfect. They did not create a perfect document, but the Constitution certainly protects a lot of those situations. We don't want those rights to be lost in the anger of the moment, but I encourage everybody, if you have a grievance, express that grievance, express it freely and openly, but do not tie it to anti-social behavior or criminal behavior. There is no defense for looting as a function of an expression of your anger. There's a proper place for anger, to change policies, to make things better, to save lives, not to let criminals obtain goods that they would like to have without having to pay for them. And this is a very difficult balancing point, but it's a balancing point that we want to strike in Westchester. I'll also mention that we're tracking the progress on the census. The census will be going until October 31st. That's still a few months away, although we are in the month of June. The census count for Westchester County is 61.5% of our households have registered for the census. That puts us ahead of the national average, which is 60.5, and the New York State average, which is at 55.5. So Westchester, as an entity, is ahead of the state and the nation. We are approaching the numbers that we had in 2010, which is very encouraging. We're just a few points behind the 2010 number. And we have a number of communities that have hit 70% or higher in their response ratio. Two communities, Croton-on-Hudson Village and Lewisboro Town, have both exceeded what they did as a percentage of households in 2010. That is encouraging. We need to have as many of those communities strike and get as close to 100% as possible. We hope to have some communities in the 80 percentile range this year, which we did not have any 10 years ago. And we hope that those communities are two that are still below the 50% mark. We believe they'll exceed that number over the course of the next month, but we want them to do much better than that. And it's basically tracking all the people that live in the community so that we can have the basis to be able to compete for financing, for grants and aid, and also be able to have proper legal representation. So that is our core report for today. We are looking and we'll continue to look very carefully at the protests that will occur today and then into the evening to try to maintain the good and order for the safety of everyone, but also to express the natural desire to be upset over the occurrences of what's happened, to do so in a way that stops spreading the COVID virus. It's essential for people to understand that we cannot have a spike in the virus that goes with it, and we have a major economic challenge, which is why we're working on opening up the economics of the society so that people can start to get back into a normal flow of things. With that, I'll check with Catherine Chaffee, see if we have some questions.
You've answered them.
I've answered them already.
Answered them already.
Very good. Very telepathic. Well, I suppose if you just keep talking, it'll keep going. If any friends from the press have any further questions they'd like to ask us, they're welcome to reach out to Catherine. We can talk subsequently to this. We have a number of other activities that'll be going on today. Some of them will be internal things to find out a little bit more about how we're moving on the opening of the society through phase 1 into phase 2. And then also, as I mentioned, there'll be some rallies this evening in a couple of communities that Ken Jenkins, the Deputy County Executive, myself, and others will be there to show support. And again, we encourage you to be safe, use sensible practices to protect your personal health and that of your family. We encourage you, when the night goes down and you've had the chance to express your opinion, stay home. There's no purpose in going out late at night, in the middle of the night. And if there is some altercations that occur, if late at night there are people out there who wish to do people harm, you would be better off not being there for that. We do not have a curfew in effect in Westchester County or in any of the cities, but it is just smart thinking that if you don't have to be out after a certain hour, stay home and let our professionals deal with whatever's happening out there in a professional way. They will do it with a great degree of discretion, and hopefully we'll wake up tomorrow morning with no incidents to have to report. Have a wonderful day. George Latimer. Stay safe.